Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our EQ2 community conversations. We're so happy to have you all join us here today. As you may know, our goal in these webinars is to share knowledge around best practices, implementation, tips, and strategies, and just to hear the wide range of creative EQ2 applications that we've been hearing from agencies across the country. Before we get started, I'll briefly introduce myself, a little bit about the webinar format, EQ2, and last but not least, our absolutely stellar guests from Northwest Passage. They'll be sharing about the ways they're bridging the gap between EQ2 best practices and what happens day to day on the floor. This is really timely for us as Lionheart is soon going to be releasing a compilation of our best practices. And so if you're an EQ2 person, you'll see those on your online facilitator training soon. So as I'm talking, I really invite you to start to introduce yourself using the chat feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So maybe share your name, tell us where you're coming from. If you don't already know me, I am Dr. Jess Linnick, Clinical Director at the Lionheart Foundation. And on the call with me today behind the scenes are Stephanie, Jan, and Beth from the Lionheart team. So you might see their names pop up answering questions in the chat. If you do have questions, please feel free to use the chat feature, and a big thanks to everyone who submitted questions beforehand. We're going to try to get to everyone live. As a reminder, this webinar is being recorded, so you'll get a link to view it in a couple of days, and you can feel free to share that forward with anybody that you want. So just a teeny refresher about Lionheart and the EQ2 program. Lionheart is a nonprofit. We've been around for over 30 years. If you want to learn more about us, we invite you to check out our website, which is new, recently updated. We're very excited about that. So check it out, lionheart.org. And the program we'll be discussing today is EQ2, our staff self-regulation and workforce development program, really designed to help direct care staff build the essential and often very complex social and emotional regulation skills that they need to do their jobs well. So without further ado, please allow me to introduce the team from Northwest Passage in Wisconsin. Hi to Popz and Misty. Please turn your cameras on so we can see your beautiful, beautiful faces. We're so thrilled to have you join us here today and for you to share all the amazing work that you are doing within your agency. Hi.
Hi, how's it going? Good to see
Hi. So let me just share a little bit about our guests today because we are just could not be more excited to have them. So Popz Reyes is a staff development manager at Northwest Passage, where he leads onboarding and training, focusing on trauma-informed care, behavioral interventions, and crisis de-escalation. He began his journey as a youth development specialist, working directly with youth, and has grown into a leadership role. Popz holds a bachelor's degree in social work and a master's degree in organizational leadership. Hi, Popz.
Hi, real quick. Hi, Beth. I see your message.
We're one big happy family here. Misty Fast is a mental health clinician specializing in the assessment and treatment of youth with complex trauma, attachment disruptions, and behavioral challenges. Working within an intensive assessment-based program, she partners with youth, families, and interdisciplinary teams to develop individualized, trauma-informed understandings that guide treatment and long-term success. Misty uses a multifaceted, evidence-informed approach and is known for translating complex clinical insights into clear, compassionate, and actionable recommendations. She's deeply committed to supporting and connecting staff, helping teams build consistency, confidence, and alignment in delivering trauma-informed, relationship-based care. What fantastic people we have here. Hi, Misty.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
Awesome. So great to see everybody. If you're just coming on, again, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, tell us who you are and where you're coming from. But before we dive into your work specifically with EQ2, would love for you both just to tell us a little bit about Northwest Passage, your individual programs, and the youth you serve. So Popz, I'll turn it over to you first. Let us know a little bit about your
Yeah, absolutely. No, so Northwest Passage is located in rural Wisconsin, up north about an hour south of Lake Superior. So we're in a lot of woods. Um, but we are comprised of four types of programs within Passage. So we have our Riverside program, our Prairie View program, which are both residentials. We have our assessment center and then our community-based program. I specifically work in the Riverside program as a staff development manager. It's a residential treatment program that primarily works with adolescent males, 12 to 17 years of age. And then their average stay, which when they're with us, is kind of ranges from 6 months to I've seen 2 years at most. So yeah, so that's a little bit about our Riverside program. Yeah,
Awesome. Thanks, Popz. And Misty, tell us a little bit
absolutely.
about your program.
So I am in the assessment program, and we service kids as young as about 7 years old, all the way up to 17 in assessment, and they're with us for 37 days. And in the assessment program, we do a multidisciplinary report, give recommendations to the county and things like that to best support the kiddos. We also have the girls' residential unit within assessment. So we kind of share a building. We are also out in the woods. We're about a half hour or so from where Popz is. So we have a large property here. We can take the kids outside and really get to do a lot of nature and support with the kiddos over here.
I want to come for a visit.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Come on over.
And I know the rest of my team wants to come because we love nature. We're a bunch of nature people. So that's our next Beth. Beth, our new executive director, I'm telling you. So wondering now if you might share a little bit about EQ2 was introduced at your two sites. There are, today we're going to be talking a lot about best practices. And so we'll start with maybe best practices in your rollout. We also did get a question from the audience when someone signed up about buy-in. So I know you're going to go over that, but tell us a little bit, maybe Pop, we'll start again with you, a little bit about how it was first introduced.
Well, first off, I kind of want to touch base on how I was introduced to it because I had the really cool opportunity of going to Arizona and seeing Jess and Beth in person and seeing them present about EQ2. I remember when I first saw it, I was like, what in the world is this thing? I've never seen any sort of training, innovative way to approach training direct care staff. So um, a big part of best practice when I kind of was deciding on it was hearing from other programs and organizations that already implemented EQ2. And I kind of brought all that information back to Northwest Passage. And I got back to the office and I'm like, okay, what do I do now? So, um, but my next step was to gain that leadership buy-in, right? The directors and our board who oversees Northwest Passage. We all know that we can't do anything and nothing really runs well unless leadership buy-in wholeheartedly. So that was the first thing I did. I went to a directors meeting with everybody there and I kind of gave in the best way I could an explanation of EQ2. I talked about um, the testimonies from other organizations and kind of told them how EQ2 has impacted their program, and then how innovative it was compared to other things we have done in the past and how different it was. And so no one in that room really had seen any sort of program or training that had done that before, with it being so like community based and working together as a team and things like that. So once I was able to talk to them, then they were like, all right, Pops, go for it. So that was kind of how um, um, it started. But a big thing that, you know, we decided was in order for this thing to work, we have to build off the leadership, right? So the leadership, the directors began to start training with the direct care staff, including myself. And that's when the vulnerability piece started to begin. And that's kind of where it took off, right? So that was a leadership buy-in. Now we kind of go back a little bit to, okay, how in the world do I get staff to understand that, hey, we're rolling this really new thing out and I'm excited about it and I want you to be excited about it. Um, but we all know that in the space of residential and treatment, our direct care staff have been through so many trainings, so many refreshers, and at the same time are dealing with their own personal burnout, whether that's in work, outside of work. So I really honed in on the vulnerability piece to connect with the staff about EQ2. And I went back to the old school method and met with them in person, one on one. Hey guys, I went to Arizona. There's this really cool thing that I found. I have no idea if it's going to work, but would you please go with me on this journey? Here's the information. Here's the website. Here's your LinkedIn profile. And ask questions because I'm also learning with you and we can do this thing together. Of course, I put posters up around, sent emails, of course, but I try to kind of connect with that human connection type thing. I think that really worked for us. And then, of course, also letting them know like, hey, your supervisor and the director of the program are going to do this with you as well. So don't be a little scared. If you are, I am too, but we can do this together. So that was kind of the way I wrote it out at Riverside. And yeah, that's kind of how I was introduced. And best practices were kind of thrown in there at pieces, but at the same time, that human element was also so important as well.
I think that human element is a best practice, Popz.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Misty, tell us a little bit about how it happened for you all.
So over here in assessment, it was a little different because Popz was very much so the leader in all of this. So he was the human connection. And over here in assessment, I was recognizing we really needed some co-regulation support. We needed to build staff connection with our youth that we're working with. And then Popz sent me this email and he was like, hey, check out EQ2. Yeah. And so I did. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what we're needing over here. And it's trauma informed and it's vulnerable. And the leadership jumped on board. And so it just created this beautiful process with the staff because we all got to be vulnerable together. But we really needed that leadership support and that human connection. So we rolled it out very similarly here where we were having one-on-one conversations. We had group conversations prior to starting the EQ2 group to really share what the experience was going to be like and what to expect throughout the process, and just gave them that information so they could jump on board. So it didn't feel like, oh, is this just another training or is it just this? We wanted them to feel good about participating in it.
Yeah. Misty, I remember you sharing that actually your main assessment director came to multiple groups. Is that right?
Yes, he was involved in almost all of our groups that we had here. And he is our main director in assessment. And actually in our Prairie View unit now, which is our residential female unit, we have one of our directors leading those sessions.
Wow.
Mhm.
That, when we think about best practices, Popz and Misty, as you both shared, the leadership buy-in and also modeling and real genuine engagement. Like we are in this with you. There is not a hierarchy of us working through this material together. And as you know, it's facilitated in circle, which really lends itself to that. But you all really highlighting how you modeled that and really put that into practice, really using those relationships that you built. It's so beautiful how vulnerable you were right alongside staff and how that really helped to increase all the buy-in. And Popz, I know you were direct care staff before you became training manager. So I'm wondering if you might share a little bit about how that informs your work now.
Oh, it does in a lot of ways that I approach working with staff. I mean, number one, I would say the main thing is that as a direct care staff, I was thrown all these different types of trainings, best practice. Here's the information. It's science that if you do this, this, and this, the kids are going to regulate. This is going to happen. Um, but I think all of us who've worked in this field knows when you're in the midst of a crisis and your body is just completely overwhelmed, all that information just goes out the window. You don't know that you have to, stop, breathe, and choose when two kids are screaming at you because your body is really just overwhelmed with it, right? EQ2 reference in there, just so you know. But so And so when I was looking at EQ2 and how innovative it was and the way we talked about it, it wasn't just one person telling a group of people, this is how you de-escalate a resident. This is how we work with kids who have a lot of trauma. The way EQ2 approached it is we're in a circle together, we're talking about it together, and we are going over the skills that we need to do in order to practice it and then apply it to the field that we're working in, right? So when I realized that, I kind of was like, and that's the reason why we have to do this. If I had this as a direct care staff, I think I would have been more prepared and more, emotionally and mentally aware of where my body was doing when I was feeling things in the midst of crisis, but also like given a toolbox when I entered into a unit or a house. And so that's the way I approach everything is, what did I feel, but also hearing from others as well is a big part of what I do now. And so, yeah, does that answer the question a little bit?
1000%, 1000%.
Okay.
And I'm reminded of when we were talking kind of a little bit as we were preparing for this, that you often coach staff really directly on the floor to use the skills. Do you want to share just a little bit about that or how you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, another thing, how we get this to be a long foundational term thing is we can't just go do group and then move forward. A big part of my job is being able to be with them in the trenches. Sometimes we call it because it is a tough space sometimes, but then remind them, hey, just take a moment, go get some coffee, take a breath real quick. And those are the things that EQ2 reminds us what to do. So it's not me simply telling them, hey, make sure you do this skill when they're already overwhelmed. It's simply giving gentle reminders that, hey, go get some coffee and make sure breathe a little bit if you want, and then maybe look at a poster that we hung up and glance at it or something like that, but not being too forward with it, because we all know when we're overwhelmed, we don't like to listen to anybody, especially maybe supervisors, because we hear them all the time, and that's important to know as well. So yeah.
Yeah. So I really hear you, using your own experience on the floor and what you would have needed, what felt good to you and what you imagine
Absolutely.
feels good to your staff as you're really coaching them in real time. And we do often, one of the best practices we share a lot is that direct care staff actually become EQ2 facilitators. And so
Yeah.
but I just got to ask you this. If you were to give a piece of advice to a direct care staff who was just starting to facilitate EQ2, what do you think you would say?
I thought about this question because you asked me when we last talked. I think the answer, I would say, it's okay not to be confident. It's okay, because as you go along, everybody's gonna be working the journey together, and you're all gonna kind of build that confidence together. My first 5 minutes of being a facilitator told me everything I needed to know. I was super, super nervous because I was like, holy cow, I just had this company invest in this thing, and I hope this works, and I don't want to screw it up. And the first 5 minutes, I stumbled over my words. Everybody started laughing at me, and then kind of got the nerves down. And then I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, we're just all human trying to do this one thing. And then we went forward, and it was great, right? And so we all kind of worked together. And I think that's the one thing I would say. It's okay not to be confident, but because everyone's going on that journey together. So
1000% working the journey, right? That you really, and I see some folks in the chat resonating with you that's really how,
yeah,
but that when you really keep that in mind, that like we are all just humans walking this earth doing
yeah,
the best we can. And especially when we're working in a residential setting of any kind, we're here to support each other, and let's just have
yeah,
that at the forefront. So beautiful, Popz. Thank you for sharing.
absolutely.
So Misty, I'm wondering if you might share a little bit about your perspective as a clinician and a therapist. We talk a lot about and we have talked a lot about how EQ2 creates vulnerability in groups, but I'm wondering if you might share more about how it shows up on the floor, or anything you want to share about that vulnerability from your perspective.
Yes. So one of my most favorite experiences with EQ2 was that vulnerability piece, right? How it's set up to have these open conversations, how it brings real life experiences, right, into those group settings. So everyone feels that connection, like, yes, we have been here before. We have felt
Yeah.
this way. We have been in this situation and we don't know what to do. And so it allowed us all to be so vulnerable together. And again, having that leadership in there and being vulnerable with them really allowed staff to feel comfortable and opening up, being able to express themselves and situations, right, that they need to get up and out as well. So that vulnerability piece was just so huge. And since completing the groups, it's really been beautiful to like hear the staff have these conversations together on unit. I can walk through the unit and sometimes I hear them offer that stop, breathe, and choose. One we really work hard on here is fix your face, right? What are we looking like when we're talking to the youth? What are our reactions? What are they seeing? And I can hear the staff having those conversations and really utilizing these skills in the moments as they need to. And so not only is it helping them be vulnerable with each other, with leadership, it's helping the kids, right, begin to open up and be vulnerable as well because they're seeing the adults utilize these skills and begin to regulate in the space.
1000%. So it's really going from you're practicing and modeling that in group that really gets translated onto the floor, which then gets translated to the young people you serve.
Yeah.
Totally.
I know you've got a bulletin board that Popz. I forgot to share your picture. We can share it in a minute, but Misty,
Yeah,
I want to share your bulletin board. Could you tell us a little bit about, I hope folks can see it. Can you tell us just a little bit about this cool bulletin board?
Okay, so we created this bulletin board.
It's so great.
I wanted to give EQ2 coping skills and reminders. So I actually lead groups in assessment with the kids, and we picked our favorite EQ2 coping skills alongside of different passageway elements that we follow here, and we created this coping skill board. So anytime staff or youth or anybody in leadership is walking through the hallway, they get to see this board and remind themselves, right? It's okay for us to not be okay sometimes, but we have all of these beautiful coping skills to utilize when we're in those moments. So really allowed the kids to learn what staff was learning in these coping skills and to practice them together. So it was beautiful.
This is so cool. I'm seeing so many coping skills. I see, of course, stop, breathe, and choose, our fan fave.
Yeah.
I see recognize, release, and refocus, which is from EQ2 Plus.
Yeah.
I'm just loving this. We're gonna put this probably on our online facilitator training so everybody can take a look. Misty, we'll ask you permission, but that's so, so, so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow. So it's always uplifting, of course, to hear how folks are using the skills in real time. But as we said, as you said, we're in the trenches, right?
Yeah.
Tough times happen. And I know we met with you for your consultation a while back, not long after there was a pretty big incident at your facility. But I also know that the way you handled it really bridged that gap between best practices and real life. So would you mind sharing just a little bit about that? And I know it's tough when we share things that are hard. So I want to really thank you for agreeing to share about this. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we were in an unfortunate situation where me and 3 to 4 other staff members were in a really unsafe crisis with a resident, with one of the kids we work with. We were very lucky that nobody got really hurt really bad physically. It just, sometimes when these things happen, to this severity, it is rare at times, but when they do happen, it does take a toll on not only the staff, but the shift in general. So it was funny, it happened that Thursday or Friday, and then we had EQ2 group on Monday afternoon. So then everyone kind of had a few days to kind of think about it, and the adrenaline go down and things like that. So when EQ2 group happened on Monday, um, kind of right off the bat, I kind of felt the vibe of the group. It's like it's Monday, I'm back at work. I'm, still thinking about this really scary thing that happened on Thursday. And as we were getting into the EQ2 book and going through the content, um, I realized that the staff, there was a lot of internal frustrations coming out. Um, and in that moment, I made a decision that we had to close our EQ2 books, put them down, and then just be in that present moment in the circle without doing or learning anything else, and just whatever needs to happen in the next 30, 40 minutes needs to happen. So after I said everyone put the books down, that's okay, we don't have to go through it. I opened up the floor and just I said, okay, everyone let your guards down. What's on people's mind? This is a safe place, as we said in the beginning when we started EQ2, we're grounded in the circle. Um, so if you have anything to say, or you want to talk about anything, or if you just want to sit there and just breathe and close your eyes, that's also okay too. We don't have to talk about it. But as I opened up that space, everybody that was a part of that incident, even the others that weren't a part of it, were still impacted by that, because it was a kid that they really cared about who ended up having to go to jail and discharged from our program. So a lot of feelings were felt in that moment, and everyone just kind of started talking. A lot of frustrations came out. A lot of the outside world would probably see as like complaining and being really negative, but if you change your perspective, it's what the staff needed in that moment to be okay for their shift coming up, right? And so a really beautiful thing about where we were at, we were still grounded in the EQ2 foundation of being in the circle, being in this space where it was a complete safe space. A director was in there, so they immediately know that they have, that they weren't being judged, even if supervisors were in there. And it was a really hard conversation to have. It brought up a lot of things, but at the same time, it was so impactful in a good way, because we were all able to kind of leave it where it was at, had to talk about, and then breathe. We did a little breathing activity, and then we kind of went on with our day. And I left it was a really heavy meeting, but it's what, again, needed to happen.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Popz, I'm really struck by your clinical intuition to do that in the moment. It was so spot on, to be able to say, put your books down. We don't need to, what needs to happen right now is for us
Yeah.
to be together and talk to each other.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it's just so brilliant and beautiful that you did that. And that is, it's not an easy thing to do as a facilitator, to make those choices, to say,
Mhm.
do I go forward? And I know that's a lot of what we talked about in the consultation, like kind of
Yeah.
if this were to happen again, what
Like, what do we
might I
do?
do?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and just for our audience members to know that as Popz came into that consultation, what happened thereafter is Lionheart created more and more resources to help folks with critical incident debriefing. So we have already the What Went Down worksheet in Module 5, but we created What Went Down 2.0, and a whole bunch of other circle prompts and things to support folks in the aftermath of the incident. And that came out of our conversation, Popz. So I want to thank you for bringing that into consultation, for being vulnerable to
For
share
sure.
that in that moment with us now. I'm sure every single person that's on this call right now can relate to having an experience like that. 1000%.
Absolutely.
And now there's a lot more resources out there for folks to, from an EQ2 perspective, kind of work with critical incidents. And you see there's lots of cool stuff coming in on in the chat for you. So thank you, Popz.
Oh.
Yeah. So I think, before we get into questions, Misty, I know that we've talked about how EQ2 really is a nice fit for passageway. It's a mouthful for me, but could you share a little bit about that, about about passageway and what it means.
Yes. So here at Northwest Passage, we follow the passageway elements, which include nature, recreation, relaxation, nutrition, exercise, relationship, service, and spirit. And so all of our passageway elements, we try to get all of the kids outdoors for a couple hours a day, get them in nature, get them in sports, teach them different ways to meditate, to regulate their body, and really incorporate this into their daily schedule. And what I found with Passageway and the connection to EQ2 is that it really supports the young person's ability to connect, right? To reflect and to move from that survival-based functioning into that relational functioning, right? So it's helping to build our relationships, not just with each other, right? But with the youth that we are working with, as I said earlier. So EQ2 is the perfect connection to Passageway because it gives those real life experiences, right? It gives those real life stories and how to manage behavior and how to increase capacity, to increase safety, to increase that self-awareness and really learn, right, where our own stuff is coming from. So we can kind of move past some of that and connect at a deeper level with our youth. So it's been beautiful to see these two worlds really combine and come together in such a natural way.
That's beautiful. You know, I think what I've heard from both of you today so much is how is the how. You know, that we often, there's a lot, and I think Popz, you said this earlier, a lot thrown at direct care staff saying, do this, do that, engage, connect.
Yeah.
Right? Kind of, you say these big words and they're like, what does that, what
Yeah.
does that mean? How do I do that? And not only
Yeah.
how do I do that, but I need practice. I need
Yeah.
practice in doing that. And so practicing it in group, practicing it on the floor, and then Popz, as you just illustrated, practicing it when things get tough. But
Yeah.
that somebody in a leadership capacity or as a facilitator kind of shepherding you through this process, right? Falling back on the EQ2 structures and principles, circle and meditation and breathing, so that now, for example, Misty, the next time a staff member has a little tiff with a young person, let's say it's not an incident, but it's a little disagreement, they know how to manage that and they know how that fits in with their greater kind of intention or orientation around passageway and what they're supposed to be doing, right? That feel right? Yeah.
That is absolutely correct.
Awesome. So we're going to move into a little Q&A portion. We got some questions that folks submitted prior to that I'll start with. And then folks, if you have questions for Popz and Misty, please put them in the chat. So I love this question. Either of you can answer or both of you can answer. What about implementing EQ2 has most surprised you and why? What has most surprised you and why?
I would say for me, it would be how EQ2 points out the natural things that we do as humans and like breathing, right? And and doing those things and how easy they can be once we just give a gentle reminder to staff, right? It seems so small, but like those little things that EQ2 says, like those are the most impactful to me and for the staff that we have, right? Like fix your face. Like you hear that. I've heard that growing up a lot, but then you don't really know what it means. And then EQ2 kind of breaks it down. You're like, oh, that makes sense, right? Stop, breathe, and choose. We do that naturally, right? But sometimes we don't really
Sometimes
get
we
into
don't.
the depths on why we do it, right? It's like, oh, yeah, I need to do that. That makes a lot of sense. So I would say that was like the biggest impact for me. But
So
you know,
cool. Misty.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of that, I think it helps her to give permission in those moments too, right? Like, yes, we know we should stop, breathe, and choose, or we should take a break, or we should do this, but understanding that why behind it helps staff then have permission to take care of themselves, right? To take that breath, to show up, to regulate, and really being okay with that when they need that time and space, right?
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. It's normalizing it, which is so much of, I think, what we do in as humans is normalizing our experiences. So, um, the next question we got, which I also kind of love, what is the best practice to implement? Like if you had to, you've named so many. I'm just going to rattle off the ones that from the beginning. If I probably am going to forget some, but leadership buy-in, individual vulnerability with direct care staff to really get that buy-in. As you were facilitating groups, you had directors and supervisors in there. I see Dennis has a message in the chat also about that.
Yeah.
Really leading by example, coaching on the floor, using it as critical incident debriefing, finding ways to weave it in, teaching it to the young people more.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what do you think is the best practice?
I would say for me, the best practice is the vulnerability piece. We can't, when we don't connect to something at a personal level, we don't really buy into if it's going to work or not. Maybe that's just me personally, or maybe that's just my staff in general. But staff know when you're BSing them pretty good. So if you say, "Hey, this is going to work," I guarantee you have to try this. They're like, "Oh, okay, whatever." But if you say, "Hey, I don't know if this is going to work. I have reservations as well, but I want to go on I want to do this. Can you do this with me?" Right? That's truth right there, rather than this is working. Or if I would have brought my, worries of anxiety of like the director said yes to this, I need it to work. It wouldn't have worked, right? So I would say that's the important piece.
Yeah. So well said, Popz. You really highlight, something we talk about on EQ2, having a growth mindset. The
Yeah.
idea that vulnerability, a growth mindset, we are in it together. We are
Hmm.
allies in this process. And so someone mentioned authenticity in the chat that
Yeah.
really, really in how we frame it, right? And if we are sort of unattached to outcome, we know we want it to work, but
Yeah.
let's just all be in it together and see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Misty, what do you think? What's the best practice for you?
I am right on board with the vulnerability being the best piece of it. And I think what comes after, right, that is that modeling piece of it, right? Not letting it fall away. So
Yeah.
continuing to have those conversations, to be practicing the skills ourselves, right? To be using the language on the units, right? And keeping that vulnerability kind of going. Like it doesn't just stop here in the group. We're going to keep that going on to the units, into our group spaces.
1000%. I see Beth put one of our 3 C's in the chat, consistency, which is exactly what you're
Yeah.
saying, Misty and Popz, that really what you do in one place is what you reinforce in another place. And there's
Yeah.
no spot where EQ2 is not infused, even in small
Mhm.
ways, which is really
Yeah.
that just is so exponentially important. Um, I would love to go over to the chat. Dennis from Says, hi Dennis, asked an
Hey,
awesome
Dennis.
question. I don't know if you know each other, but you should know each
No
other.
idea. No idea who
Great.
Dennis is.
Love
Hi,
it.
Dennis.
You meet at HCRC maybe one day. Are there any challenges having directors or supervisors participating or leading EQ2 groups? What do y'all think?
There are challenges for sure. I would say one of the challenges that we went through was staff are afraid that what they say would be used against them in their reviews, annual reviews, or their work performance. Um, because there's a lot of honesty that happens in group. And so, and I mean, that is such a honest fear to have, right? When you have leadership in group and you are not expected to, but you are encouraged to be as open as you want in group. And so in realizing that when we first started, the first group that I have with any group, I talk about this space. What is this space, right? This is a safe place, but what does that actually mean? And so I always say whatever is said in this group, and that is a vulnerable thing to say, it stays here. It doesn't leave this room. It doesn't leave this space at all. And the supervisors and everyone they've followed through and have really trusted that, and staff have seen that. And so that was one of the challenges we had, but we were able to really talk through it because they're right. And like, if we're talking about a certain experience they had and they said, pardon my language, or like, I was thinking, man, I hate this kid right now. I don't like him at all. I need to get away from me, right? Like, that's an honest thing to say. Maybe, in those words, but yeah, that was one thing that we had to address for sure.
Yeah. Misty, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that, yes, that is 100% accurate what Popz had shared. And so something that we started to do in our group to help build some of that trust a little bit, and increase that vulnerability with our staff is we actually had the leaders in the group start sharing first. So they would share some of their struggles. They would share their answers from the material and put it out there first. And that helped the group then begin to feel that vulnerability together. So really kind of trying to break through some of those fears right off the bat by having leadership kind of step up and share their fears.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Sorry, Popz, were you going to say something?
No, I was agreeing with Misty. That was incredible.
Yeah, that's a good move. It really, that is so brilliant, Misty, because we say for EQ2 in circle, if you're not sure who to start with someone that you want to model the vulnerability or model the kinds of responses. And that really opens it up for staff to see leadership really, really stepping into the role of vulnerability and really putting their all into it. It sounds like you've got some really, really great leaders on your teams, that they're willing to do that. We talk to a lot of agencies, and sometimes leaders are not so willing to be as vulnerable or engaging. So that's fantastic. So fantastic. I think I just saw that there's one more question in the Q&A. Unfortunately, Patricia, I'm so sorry. Email us and we will try to answer how can juvenile probation officers benefit from EQ2. So Popz and Misty, if you have thoughts about that, you can email me. But we are unfortunately we are about at the end of our webinar for today. So as we close out, I really just want to thank everyone for coming. We really could never and would never be able to continue to create the programs we do at Lionheart, and particularly EQ2, without this community. And Popz and Misty, I'm going to cry. I think I cry in every webinar, but that's fine. It's just webinars are footage of me crying, which is great. But you two just exemplify what it means to be an EQ2 champion, an EQ2 facilitator, an EQ2 human. Like, you are just so deeply human in this work, and that you can see the ripples that has out into the agency. And so thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And you're getting lots of love in the chat. Folks, if you want to say thank you to Popz and Misty in the chat, please do. If you have more questions for the Northwest Passage team, for Popz or Misty,
absolutely,
please email us at eq2@lionheart.org, and we'll send your message along to Popz and Misty. We do offer these webinars on an ongoing basis a couple times a year. Our next one will be in November with Kim Peacock from an agency in Canada, which will be awesome. But if you're interested in doing these, we'd love to hear from you. If you want to check out parts of the EQ2 program, if you're not familiar, in a minute, Steph is going to show on the screen a QR code that you can scan to check out the EQ2 app or our online facilitator training. And don't worry if you don't get the codes now, we'll send an email with all this information alongside the recording in a few days. Popz and Misty, any last words you want to share to our esteemed audience?
Yeah, well, first, thank you for everyone for showing up. I know everyone has a lot of busy things going on during the work, so I appreciate just y'all coming in and chatting with us, and being here. But also, a even bigger thank you to you, Jess and Beth, and the Lionheart team for supporting Northwest Passage through this. I know I had so many questions and was worried in so many ways, but y'all really have done a great job in working and going through that journey with us. And we are still continuing to do so many things with EQ2. We are just at the start of, rolling it out to our other programs. And as we get new staff and getting them trained. So again, and this doesn't happen without Lionheart, and I really appreciate y'all so much.
Thank you, Popz. Thank you.
Yes, thank you all so much. Thank you, everybody who could come today. But we
Yeah.
so much so appreciate EQ2 and what it's brought to our agency, what it's brought to just us as individuals, our staff, our kids. It has been amazing. And so we so appreciate just everything EQ2 has brought.
Oh, the love is so mutual. We need to get some kind of a new t-shirt made that's like, I don't know, EQ2 human to EQ2 human, like core self to core self. It's just like,
Yeah.
we're so like when we see each other at conferences, we just wear the t-shirt and like run into a hug or something,
Absolutely.
That's very EQ2-y.
Have our own hand.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Well, again, thank you both so much. Thank you to everyone for joining. You'll get this recording in a few days. Please email us eq2@lionheart.org and have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your day and week. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.